Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, we're going to watch more of this podcast. I kind of want to watch the whole thing, get all of the tea directly from the source. And then I do eventually want to talk about fat acceptance, TikTok's reaction to this interview or to this podcast. So let's go ahead and continue. I believe she's going to start talking about weight loss surgery. Or maybe that she got something like that. I haven't watched everything. I'm coming at it fresh, okay?
It's like a pretty quick surgery compared to some of the other ones. And if you are a binge eater, an emotional eater, if you eat a lot and you continue that
It seems like this has really blown up the fatosphere. I see it because a lot of anti-FAs have been talking about it. So I'm like, okay. And a lot of fat activists are like freaking. I saw Nadia's video. I didn't watch it yet, Nadia, because I'm trying to keep my perspective cold. No, I'm just kidding. I'm trying to keep my perspective fresh or like my own, basically. So I haven't watched anybody else's takes yet. I did see Sam at Every Size also posted about it. Haven't watched. I'm keeping myself fresh. So let's continue.
behavior, even though it's harder because your stomach's smaller, it's a real thing. It's not a myth that you could stretch your stomach back.
Right.
So
I have a few people that did the sleeve, and that's what happened to them.
right. So they're like not even, a lot of people go back and have to get a revision surgery or something else or go on Ozempic or any of those things after because it didn't work for them. And he was like, this isn't going to work
Right.
for you. And I was like, why would I do something that he's telling me isn't going to work? So I was like, what's the alternative? There's also the bypass. So again, this is all under bariatric surgery. What he told me is that there was a newer surgery, which is what I did. And what everyone online, of course, at this point, everyone's like, okay, well, she did one of the shots or she did the sleeve or something. Like, no one guessed this because it's not a known
It's so
thing.
new.
So it's called SADIE, which is a very long name, but it's like the acronym is
Right.
SADIE, which I would say is a mix of both of those surgeries. They cut out 80% of the stomach. They move around the intestines. I also was, got with my health issues, ended up having a fatty liver. So they actually had to like hold up the liver during that too because it could be dangerous. And
It's a major thing within B followed by E followed by D. And thank you guys so much in the comments I saw on today's video. Somebody was asking what the hell I was talking about. I appreciate you guys so much for letting them know because it's hard. We have to be a little bit, it's very sensitive to talk about these types of topics, but I call it toxic ritualistic behaviors. It has to do with behaviors around consumption. I have to kind of talk kind of weird and coded. So if you can't catch it, then just ask and hopefully somebody will tell you. I loved it. Thank you guys so much.
why even talking about this would I think that
But
the
yeah,
recovery
when you have the one where you're eating a lot, it can cause fatty liver. It's very common. As far as I know I had fatty liver from a very young age. I don't know if I still have it or not. I probably do. Really, you just gotta lose the weight if it's non-alcoholic. Your deficit is your best friend. Your deficit is your best friend. You gotta burn the fat in the liver. Nobody wants to hear that. I know in the toxic ritualistic space, people are like, oh, it can never be fixed. It can never work. It's done. I have a fatty liver. It's never going to change. No, it's called a deficit. If it's non-alcoholic fatty liver, it's called a deficit. If it is alcoholic fatty liver, it's called not drinking. But that's a whole other topic that I don't want to get into here. But I'm just saying, there are things to be done. Okay? But it can take years. It takes time to work on your fatty liver.
would be so simple is insane. But I was told that.
How was the recovery?
I
Brutal.
the worst thing of my life.
Oh my
like
gosh.
I did the surgery. He did tell me. And it's
hard.
I can't blame him because it's
Surgery in general is really hard. I can't even imagine. I haven't had tons of surgeries. I had a tonsillectomy when I was in high school. It was horrible. It was awful. So I can only imagine, my mom just had a shoulder surgery this, past December, it's tough. Surgery's tough. So I can't even imagine.
What most people, I had a rarer situation. I just reacted differently. That's the point. Like, this is my journey. Everyone reacts differently to everything.
Right.
And I did the surgery. He said I would be out of the hospital in a day, and that in 5 days I could travel and like go back to my work schedule.
Wow.
I couldn't leave the hospital. I couldn't swallow water. I was like projectile vomiting.
Oh
like I
my
was just like they don't let you leave if you can't drink water. I was so sick. I was in recovery for hours after, like in the recovery room. But then that went on for 6 weeks.
Stop.
No, like it was hell.
That's
like literally
brutal.
hell. And again, he said this wasn't normal. So that was
Right.
actually making me feel worse at the same time. I'm like, something's wrong. I
Right.
should have never
That's
done this.
scary.
Like I literally
course.
ruined my body, like ruined everything.
I think it's somewhat common to feel regret after surgery because it's very painful. I even felt it, like I said, with such a lesser extent with my tonsillectomy. I was like, I regret this. That took a long time. It took me like a month. And I think they said, like, when you get it done older, it's one of the worst recoveries. It's really awful. But like I said, I can't even imagine. 6 weeks is a long time to be in that situation. That's definitely a lot worse than what I went through. And I can only imagine, like I said, I'm sorry to hear that it was, that difficult.
I was home. I started like, I went home and was with my parents, like ended up going, I tried being home in my apartment when I was with my boyfriend at the time. So he was, trying to be as supportive as he could be. But I ended up going and living with my parents because
Right.
they were concerned. And like, I was nonstop throwing up. I could not eat. And this went on so long that I got in like a very scary, like deep depression. I did not want to live anymore. Like I would literally just like, stare at the wall all day and be sick.
Oh my
Like it
gosh,
was
that's
just
horrible,
horrifying.
Remi.
And I think at that time, I had a lot of regret. I was like, oh my God, I've been this person that people like looked up to online for this whole time of like, I won't say body positive because that wasn't me.
Right.
But I always said if I was uncomfortable in my body or struggling, I was very open that I was struggling.
Right.
But I was this person that was like, but be confident in whatever you look like. And I still do believe that. And I believe that anyone can. If you are in a bigger body, you could be happy, you could be healthy. No one could tell you're unhealthy unless you only know your health. And I have so many friends that
She's still holding on to some of those things, which isn't good, in my opinion. I don't think that's good. I think it's kind of lying. It's giving lies. So I would never suggest saying something like that because that's getting into health at every size territory, which is just not true whatsoever. Not true whatsoever. And especially with somebody like her who was struggling with being such a big size, that is not honest. It's not integrity to say something like that or to allude to health at every size. That is not somebody acting in integrity.
I actually was so jealous of those people and like wanted to get there and I couldn't because my journey was different and I was in pain and I was struggling with health and this is what I felt I needed to do.
I think that's, first of all, it's very brave that you're sharing that. And I think what I can sense from you and what I know from our conversations is you are so much happier now. But I know that's also a slew of other things that you've worked on. It's not just the physical part. There was a lot internal. And still, every day I'm working on myself. And there's days I give myself pep talks. I'm like, nope, it's going to be a good day. Like it's all about the mindset. Do you feel like now, because it's been over a year.
A little over a year,
Yeah, they're really trying to protect her image. That's interesting because they're being very, very, very cautious with how they're talking about it, which I don't necessarily judge that. It's just something that I notice. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like now you're in a good place, not just body-wise, but sure aesthetically? Like,
Yeah.
Are you like, damn, I love myself?
I don't think that it's so it's a catch-22. Like Like I see Chloe, she's trying to be very nice and all this stuff about it, but and really bring up like, well, it's not just the weight loss, it's all this other stuff that you did, and being very, very careful to say that, which to me it's like, it's a delicate balance. Does losing weight solve all of life's issues? No. But from a very big size, does losing weight solve a lot of issues? Yes. A lot. Sometimes, this happened to me when I was becoming just obese, and kind of transitioning throughout morbid and getting towards obese. The things that I was complaining about, this happened a lot in the morbid phase actually, but the conversations I had with friends and the things that I complained about or worried about were different. All of a sudden it wasn't, I don't know if I'm going to survive, or I don't know if I can continue to function with how ill I am, or I don't know how I'm ever going to get through this. It became like, I don't have my money anymore, or like I don't have money and I'm single and I hate it, and it became other things that were just like really, kind of basic, and not really basic necessarily, because it was still hard, like, because it's like, will I ever find somebody again? Will I ever this? Like, things just kind of changed around obesity as well, and it became less serious. It became a little lighter. Like I said, it was more like these other types of complaints. It's like, oh my gosh, this person I don't like is going to the wedding, and just stuff like that. It just changed. And I think that's, you can see how drastic of a difference it is to lose weight from a big size. It can really increase your quality of life drastically in a way that I think is often underappreciated in those who have lost weight. As you lose the weight, your problems just shift, and you kind of, a lot of times, this is something that I'm dealing with now, being mid-size. I deal with sometimes underappreciating how far I've come, and sometimes forgetting where I came from. And that's, watching something like this, it can kind of remind me, it's like, hey, Alex, like, really appreciate what used to be going on versus what's happening today. Because it was a lot scarier and my world was so much smaller when I was super morbidly obese and struggling to get out. And for me, I did it naturally, but it was still really hard. You cannot, like, you have to really change your expectations if you're super morbidly obese. You have to understand, no matter what option you take, whether it's Ozempic, whether it's surgery, whether it's naturally, whether it's anything, it's going to be very, very difficult to get out. So you have to set that expectation and just understand there isn't a magic way to get out. It's going to be really rough no matter what. And it's up to whatever a person can handle and do. And I could not have handled what she's talking about. There's no way. But I just dealt with extreme discipline, extreme, like, I had to create, well, I wouldn't say extreme discipline, but really, I call it the Super Morbid Eras Tour. I always talk about it like the Eras Tour because I'm cheesy and gay and I'm a Swiftie, but it's like everything had to be a strategic move. I had off seasons, on seasons. I had such rigid routines around it and constantly had to mitigate if there was any issues. It's like if something went wrong with the diet or the show, I shift it, Similar to how she changed the set list because her relationship with Joe Alwyn ended. It's the same type of thing. And you have to just be able to shift and keep the show going on. And you keep doing it. It's calculated. It's one step at a time. It's every single day you're doing something. Everything you do, even if you cannot lose weight, which I often talked about it in the winter, is super hard. When it's hard in general, but when you're super morbidly obese, it's basically impossible. It's so difficult to lose weight in the winter. And you have to just still, even in the winter, it's not like an off season. It's like you're eating specific foods that build your nutrient profile, and you're preparing your body and you're preparing yourself to launch again in the spring. So you have to kind of think of everything as a step that you're taking. And in a certain sense, your life has to revolve around it. It has to be your top priority. It's difficult. And that has to be said from super morbid. It's true. And that's kind of that natural way that I did it. It was difficult, and I had to be very rigid and very organized and strategic, and I had to not listen to my emotions very often. I had to not listen and just say, no, I'm going to continue. No, I have a plan. No, I have a structure. I have this thing that I'm doing. I'm going to just keep on going, because you put on weight really easily too, because your hunger can be so much that you can gain weight too, kind of easily. And it's so untypical for you to not gain weight as a super morbid person while you're losing. Like, you have to think of it as like, I'm going down, then I go up a bit, then I go down, then I go up a bit. You know, it's kind of like that, especially seasonally. It's very complicated. It is complicated. But for most people, it's not like that. For most people, it's pretty simple, because you don't have to you have to really deal with your hunger, and foster your fullness when you're super morbidly obese, to do it naturally. And like I said, I think for some people, what I just described would probably be way too much for them, or they wouldn't want to do it. And for me, hearing her talk about the surgery, that's way too much for me, and I wouldn't want to do it. You see, so you have to kind of really think about where you're realistically at and what you're going to be able to do. Because, again, when you're in super morbid, it's survival. You're coming to survival situations. And like I said, no matter what you choose to do, you got to get rid of E followed by the letter D. You got to throw that out. None of the toxic ritualistic. If you don't know what that is, there is a link in my description where I have a video about what is toxic ritualistic, and I kind of break it down. But if you have all that going on, all this mental stuff, no matter what you do, it's not going to work. And you don't have room. You have to be very strict no matter what you're doing from a super morbidly obese perspective. I'm sure post-surgery, she had to be very strict. If you're on Ozempic, you have to be very strict, or you're going to have severe complications. You know, you have to be really on your game when you're in that. Your body's delicate. So you have to treat it as such. You know? It's tricky. It's very tricky.
But internally, are you like, damn, I love myself?
I think I'm getting there.
Okay.
I think that I've been so nervous to say this.
So it's starting to, the conversation's frustrating me a little bit, because I wish a lot of these conversations would stay physical. There's so much, you know, and I do cover emotions throughout my journey on this channel. I do, you know, very, very thoroughly. But I also always make sure, like, if I was ever on a podcast, if I was ever on Chloe, I would make sure that we spend a significant, if not even a majority of the time, talking about physical stuff and what it is to be obese and what it does to you and all of these things, and keep it about a health conversation rather than just like, well, do you like yourself now? It's like, that's kind of cheesy to me, and it doesn't help anybody. This isn't convincing anybody or educating anybody on anything, really. It's just like a fluff piece. So far, it's like a fluffy thing that's just, she's trying to fix her image, which, you know, I'm not going to hate her for it, but I'm not going to love her for it either. You know, it's very...
it the right way, but I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I think I still have struggles. I think we're all going to have struggles in whatever body or whatever point we're in our life. Have those things since the surgery in terms of the health issues that I explained, which is why I did it. I did it for my health. Have those things improved and gotten better? My blood work is 100% normal. It hasn't been in probably 5 years.
I'm appreciating this. I was just complaining. We're getting into it. Good. She's bringing it back. Thank you, Remi.
That's great.
I have genetically a bad back. Knock on wood, I have not been in bed with a bad back since. My knees don't hurt anymore. I don't sweat the way I used to. I fully got my periods back to normal.
That's huge.
Like so many things are, I have more energy than ever.
But the things that you can't see, and that's what I think people on social media sort of forget. Like, yes, you might see this happy-go-lucky girl while I'm filming this content, but internally, for a lack of a better term, you're sort of killing yourself.
Okay, I complained too soon. I did. I complained too soon. I'm a little extra. Okay. I'm a little distrusting. I've watched a little too many Jubilee videos where I don't trust this. It gets too, up in the air. This is getting real, so I appreciate this. I take back what I said. I'm going to have to take it back. I spoke too soon. Okay.
Because
I appreciate all of that. That's great. Thumbs up.
Prioritizing your health. So your internal health.
I was like deteriorating in every way, and it wasn't just physical health. It was my mental health, my physical health, my emotional. I was like,
okay. She's saying the weight loss was destroying her. I'm like, oh gosh, no. She's saying the actual. Okay.
Lost myself. I would look.
Sorry.
Would not look at myself in the mirror for over a year. Like I would literally
That's very toxic ritualistic. That's not a good sign. That's a sign that there's psychological issues around eating going on. That's not good. And a lot of people are not aware that within binge, the same body image aspects are present as on the opposite side. So people do not see binge as a legitimate disorder. They typically see it as an addiction. But this part is a huge aspect. So the fact that she couldn't look at herself in the mirror for a year, that's definitely something psychological going on.
Look at maybe just the glam I got in just my face. I would not connect my face with my body. I completely just disconnected myself. So yes, since then I've fully been working on trying to reconnect myself. I look very different. I also could not control the amount of weight that I lost. I did not want to. I'll be completely honest. I'm probably the only person that's ever gone into a weight loss surgery and been like, how do I make sure I don't lose too much and I stay curvy? He was like, no, after the fact. And I was like, I literally have called him and been like, what can I do to stop the weight loss? I didn't want to get to this point. I wanted to still be able to be healthy but curvy. I loved my curves. I always have. I feel like...
Yeah, so something too within, she's still working on it for sure. But the thing about this type of treatment, when you have the E followed by the letter D, toxic ritualistic, binge going on, right? When you have all that going on, it's always about control. And I've felt this at times because as I've lost weight naturally, my appetite has gone down. And a lot of times in the spring, for example, my appetite has shifted a lot, or in the winter. There's certain times of the year where it goes down and then certain times where it goes up. Typically goes up around Christmas or Thanksgiving, autumn, deep autumn. It's typically when my appetite gets higher. And then there are times when it goes down, and it's the first year that I really noticed it was spring of 2023. It was so strong. It's my body was telling me, do not eat anymore. No. And so I would have days where I wouldn't count calories, and I would try to eat a lot like I used to. And I would just feel like I was going to puke. And I'd just be like, I have to stop. So I'd just eat more appropriately, basically, because I get nauseous. And I wasn't used to that. And I think it's because when you're in the toxic ritualistic behavior patterns, when you're doing the toxic ritualistic behaviors, you kind of fry your brain and you fry your signals. And by 2023, I had been out of that since 2020. So I'd already been out for like 2+ years by like April 2023. And so my brain had started to recover, and it wasn't allowing me to just eat however much I wanted, because I would get grossed out, basically. And that was really bizarre, because it felt like everything before that point, I had been kind of like white knuckling it, or had been very like, I'm not doing these behaviors at all. But it was like a decision and a choice that I was making. When that happened, it freaked me out a little bit, because it was like the door to that, the access to that was slamming shut. And it was sealing shut, because I was never going to force my brain back to that. So it felt very final. And I'm sure she had a similar feeling when she was post-surgery. It's scary, because people forget that it's about control. And if you feel like you can't control the weight loss, that's a huge trigger for a lot of people. Similar to if you feel like you can't control gain, then it's a trigger. But it's not just that, but anything involved with your body, it's very anxiety inducing. So when she says that, I'm like, oh yeah, that was probably really tough for her. Really, really tough. Because it's always about control, basically. It's controlling what you put into your body. It's controlling how you look. And to a certain extent, it's controlling everything else in your life. So if things get out of control in life, then it can be really hard, and you tend to go back to it to try to escape the feeling of being out of control. So yeah, when she said that, all I'm thinking is that is a huge trigger. That's scary. I feel for her.
The negatives, I guess, are a little bit of like, I've definitely lost a little bit of my identity in myself. But then I think, when did I even have that? Because I wasn't big enough at a point to be plus size when I became online. Then when I became plus size, I was too big to do stuff. Like, I became too big to even do stuff with these fashion brands and designers, because then I was too big. Like, people were giving me all these names and titles of what I was, what I wasn't. You're not body.
This is an interesting point that I've kind of been wanting to touch upon. People often, like, I've become mid-size this year. And so I've been talking a lot about that and the identity shifting aspect of that. People often talk about feeling like you lose yourself when you lose the weight. But we also go through a similar process when we gain the weight too. And when I was going through this year, my mind harkened back to when I became super morbid in 2010. And I realized that in the years following that, like 2012 especially, I had a bit of an identity issue because of how big I had gotten. And that part is always like, it's hardly ever talked about in the conversation, because a lot of fat activists will say, like, they'll talk about the losing weight side, but they don't talk about gaining it. When you gain weight like that, you can also lose yourself, because you start to lose access to a lot of things in life, especially when you're becoming super morbid. And you do suffer an identity issue because of it on the way up too.
Body positive, this. Now I'm too skinny. I'm
Right.
like, I just don't.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting to like, which avenue are you? It's exhausting. And I think the point is, we have to stop labeling people and either just enjoy them through your phones or don't.
Right.
Like, like, to me, it's that simple. I have friends that.
Well, I think it's simple that you cannot control what other people do. That's what I will say. You can have an opinion on it. You can have this or that, but you cannot control how somebody else looks. You cannot use somebody to reinforce your toxic ritualistic mindsets that you have. You cannot do that, because people are not necessarily going to stay that way. So you can't, for example, hold on to the idea that being fat is genetic, if somebody who's been fat their whole life is on a public platform and loses weight publicly, then it freaks you out. Then they get all triggered over it because it makes you start to question your own delusions. So there's a lot that goes into these conversations. Like, I think there's a lot that goes behind a lot of the reactions. And a lot of people are used to people canceling everybody and freaking out. And, like, people are kind of used to that. So they kind of lump it in with everything else. But a lot of times there is a deeper psychological issue within these conversations going on and at play, where people literally, they watch, I think Splotchmaker, like, she broke down how she only would have quote unquote fat creators on her algorithms and stuff, and she'd only like just surround herself with that. It's like she's trying to reinforce her toxic ritualistic behaviors around consumption. Basically, she's trying to use her social media to reinforce what she's doing so she can continue, because remember, everything is about continue, and it takes a lot, because in reality it's not actually all that addictive. And that's why you have to put so much emotion into it. You have to constantly reinforce it. You have to tell yourself lies constantly. You have to lie to other people. You have to hear lies from others. You have to constantly put yourself into social media circles and groups and all these things to keep it alive, because it's such a duty. It's so miserable to be in this, that you have to do all of that. And then as you're like honestly heavily weighted down by all the duties of the disorder, you have to act like it's easy and that it's gravity and this is just my genetics. I could never not do this. Oh my gosh, I don't even know. And the reason why you do that is because it's about your own anxiety and your inability to cope with it. So you hold on to it, because if you don't have it, then you don't know what to do. If something happens, you feel lost, and you have to just not do it and be lost. And then you realize that you're alive, and then you get over it. But your world gets smaller and smaller, both on a physical level as you get bigger and bigger, and on a mental level as it takes over your life. If it gets super severe, your whole life can revolve around this. So that's why, that's all I'm trying to say. So if Remi loses weight, she shatters what people are thinking about their lives. And it freaks a lot of these people out to such an extent, they may cry over it. They may have like full-on reactions, even panic attacks, like all these different things, because it puts their toxic coping mechanism at risk. And it really is scary to those people. And I noticed, like, I saw like a little bit of Sam at Every Size's video, and it's like a lot of the fat acceptance people, they're like, well, of course she got surgery, because that's the only way that a bigger girl can become a smaller girl. Like, that doesn't ever happen without that. And it's like, that's not true. That's delusional. So it's like, people use these things too. They do this with Ozempic too. Because the reason why is because the whole delusion is that calories don't exist and people can just randomly be like 350 pounds at 5'4". That's not true. It is not true. And that's where it, and a lot of people, they enforce that or they don't want to fight that belief, because they're like, well, gosh, like if I say this, like you're telling me that I'm judging you, or you're telling me that I hate you because I said that, and so a lot of people just don't say anything about it. They just shut up about it, or they reinforce So it's like Remi's getting on here and she's like, I got the surgery, but I didn't even like all the results of it. And I'm just so worried about, like, you see, she's trying to still subtly kind of reinforce and like, she's trying, I don't even blame her. She's trying to get out of it. She's trying to get out of it herself. And she's just kind of like trying to get out, but also still reinforce it with other people. That's really tricky. So she's like, I got this drastic surgery, so of course this is why I lost the weight. I didn't mean to lose this much. It just happened. It was out of my control, right? Because I got this surgery and da, da, da. Like, you see kind of how she's talking about it. And I still think that this podcast is really about getting people off of her back, basically. That's the number one motivation. That's what I'm seeing. Because it's not really about actually saying any kind of truth. So far, I mean, we'll see if they bring up like calories or something, but I doubt they will. People usually don't. If they do, then oh my gosh, I'm wrong again. I hope they do, but I don't know. We'll see. You can see a lot of my presuppositions, but I've been burned by these kinds of podcasts and stuff over the years, put to you that way.
The sleeve, which
Okay.
I said, and when they lost, when they got to the most weight they can lose, they didn't recognize themselves because they have identified so much as a bigger person before.
That's the point of what you said before. How
Yes, and that's also a part of the disorder. I'm trying to be a little careful with that word, but that's a part of it, is an over-identification with fatness. Because it's not real. It isn't actually a part of your identity. Again, on this channel, I talk about a lot of mental strategies and social strategies, honestly, because fatness is social as well. It's a very complicated issue. It's interpersonal, it's intrapersonal. So I try to talk about a lot of different things. I talk about strategies, ways to talk about it, ways to navigate it. As an introvert girly pop, I'm like, ooh, like, let me try to help out my fellow introverts and be like, hey, if you're losing weight, like, you can do this socially and it can help you get through, right? I try to do stuff like that. And one of the things that I suggest is to identify as mid-size when you feel that it's right, as mid-size is subjective and fatness is subjective. So you kind of have to choose it based on your clothing size, height, and all that stuff. You kind of have to figure out where you're at when you become mid-size. But that's the moment when you let go of fatness. You let go of it as being a part of your identity. And it can be helpful. It's been helpful towards me because it provides that middling space and that in-between. Because I couldn't see myself going from being fat for like over 25 years to just one day being like, I'm thin now. It's like, no, this mid-size phase, it can be very helpful psychologically because you have to let that go. You have to. And so I try to talk about, like, yes, identify as mid-size or tell people that you're mid-size to bridge a gap to get to just being thin, basically, or not fat at all. So it's kind of like a training wheel in a sense, but it also helps socially because even if you don't care, like if you're not disordered or you don't have the toxic ritualistic stuff going on in your brain, a lot of other people do. You know, not everybody does. It's not like super common, but it's common enough that you're probably going to interact with somebody. So you can still use that and say like, oh, I'm mid-size. And then even like socially or colloquially, it helps. It's a social strategy as well. So even if you don't personally care, it can still be helpful in social settings because it's difficult. And I talk about it a lot also for social media purposes because you have to kind of categorize things, like I said in the last one.
Hell, was I supposed
So
to
that's why I use the categories because it helps.
share my thoughts that I'm still figuring out with everyone else? Because then when you say something as an influencer or content creator, someone with a following, people look at it as like they're going to listen to you.
I know,
and
it's a lot of responsibility.
It's a lot of responsibility, and I don't want to be a person that's a weight loss surgery advocate because, like, what if it does? What if they have this bad recovery? Like, I
That's fair enough. And you could say that. You could say I don't advocate for anything. this is just what I did, and I don't know. You know, there's other ways. You could say things like that. There's a lot of stuff you could say. But I understand that.
Be so open that I had a horrible recovery, but that I do feel better now.
Right.
I want to share both sides to it. I think that's important. I'm still processing all of it. It took me a while. I mean, I lost over 100, probably over 140 pounds in less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really harsh. That's tough. So I've lost 130 since summer of 22. So like 2.5 years ish, a little bit more. But I had, like I said, in the beginning, I had on season, off season. So I lost weight from August to November of 2022. And then I lost weight from March till November of 2023. And then 2024, I was pretty much losing. There was times where I had to do like a pound a week rather than 2. You know, I had to kind of soften the deficit over the spring and summer last year. But I did it pretty much the whole year, except for about 3 weeks in December. And this year I've done it the whole time pretty much. I took 1 week off when I went to LA this month, but I've done it all the rest of the time. So yeah, because it gets easier. That's the thing too. Like as you're not as big, it's easier. It's easier to keep going. But I've lost, like I said, 130 since August 2022, basically. That's when I started the deficit. And it's still been challenging. So I can only imagine doing it all in 1 year like that. That would be very, very stressful because it's a lot on your body too. And I don't think that that is acknowledged as much either. So in having it being forced through surgery, I would expect you probably would have to take at least a year after to kind of recover. Because it's a lot to put your brain through. It's a lot to put your body through, your psyche through. Like, it's very stressful to do it that way. So, because it was already hard, even not doing it that fast. So, I think 2022, I lost, I think, 40 pounds. 2023, then I lost 50, I think. So that was 90. And then I lost, I guess, another 40 in 2024. Around there. Something like that. I think, and then I've lost some more this year, but no, yeah, I don't know. Gosh, it's hard to even pay attention anymore. It's been a long time. I've been doing this forever. That's all I can tell you. It's been forever. I don't know the exact breakdown. I can't think about it. But anyways, yeah, so it's been something that's been done slowly over a long period of time, which I would definitely suggest just because you're less likely to regain all the way back, basically. Especially if you're doing it naturally. So, yeah, that's just my suggestion.
Even know, I didn't even realize.
Especially if you're coming from that toxic ritualistic place in your brain, try to set a goal of if you have to lose 200, try to think of it as 50 each year. That helps to kind of help you adjust and deal with it, because you can't you have to do just enough to where you're getting there, but not too much to where you completely freak yourself out. You know what I'm saying? It's very tricky. It's a tricky balance.
Right.
So
I always say to people, because my journey, I always say there's not a one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I've tried everything under the sun. I used to binge eat. It was horrible, and I get that guilt. You binge eat, it feels so good in the moment, and then as soon as you're done, you're crying and the shame and the guilt, and then the next day, for some reason, you sort of do it again. I used to have that same situation. I didn't go to the Overeaters Anonymous and stuff like that. I don't really know what I did therapy, but it's a horrible feeling. I've gotten control through my workouts. Like that's how
Yeah.
I work, but everyone's different. And there's no one's, and I also don't want to be like, all you have to do is work out. It's not that easy. It's
Right.
taken me, I've been working out for like 10 years, but it's baby steps. I had to like, it took me a very long time to get to where I am. And people forget that. And all of the work that it takes from within, though, because your brain is a muscle. You have to retrain that to even love yourself, to look at yourself. And I tell one of my girlfriends and I, she works with me. We were both bigger. And now that we're smaller, we're both like, but we're athletic smaller. We'll always joke and be like, I was so much more confident when I was fat and chubby. And like now in a bathing suit, I'm like, oh, do you see this? And like, it's
You'll always
nuts.
have some sort of, you'll always feel a certain way about yourself. I think that's normal and everyone does. But
it's,
I think to varying degrees, you know, this is something that happens a lot where people project that onto a lot of people, or they project it onto everybody. Everybody feels this way, not necessarily to the levels that we're talking here within a disordered place. It's a lot worse for somebody who's, you know, most people, maybe they're not thrilled, but you have to look at the emotional intensity behind it. So is it like, oh my God? Or is it just like, you know, that's a huge difference, okay? Like if you're looking at yourself and you have one reaction versus the other internally, they're vastly different. Like I said, you may not be thrilled, you may not be like, oh, I'm totally perfect, but if it's like something you're really obsessed with, really like very, very upset about, like it can ruin your day and like this type of stuff, then it's a totally different gradient, and that is not normal. So that stuff is not normal. But you're not, I don't know, especially if you, like I think everybody does have moments where they criticize their body, but just, you have to keep that, like, that emotional intensity in mind. I always advocate for body neutrality on my channel because it's really important to de-emotionalize the experience of looking in the mirror. It's not emotional. De-emotionalize the experience of counting calories, for example. It's not emotional. It's very boring, actually. You have to put a lot of emotion into something like that to really make it a big deal, because it really isn't. So you have to start to kind of break those things down, because there's a lot of fake emotion behind things, and it's really just a distraction from other problems. That's typically what it is, or especially trauma, especially if something very significant happened to you that's really bad. You develop that as a way to escape that, and then it starts to be something you use to escape everything, you know? But as far as like feeling insecure when you're in shape or whatever, I think that that's where we get into what I've been calling mid-sized princess energy, where it's like, as you're getting out of fatness, you still hold on to aspects of it, and you hold on to aspects of like she's talking about, I'm going to worry about my body still, even though I'm in shape now. I'm going to really, really worry about it, because she's so used to worrying about it from probably like a hangover from the disorder, or just like that pattern of that mindset of just always looking at a problem with your body or whatever. She's too used to that. So she keeps it alive in her mind, even though it's no longer relevant. That's what that is. So I don't think that that's true for everybody, but it is a sign that you've had an issue, for sure. So you have to kind of keep that in perspective. It's not everybody's like this. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. So that has to be quelled, because that is a huge myth within these circles and within especially fat acceptance. Not everybody agonizes over it. Like I said, there's a lot of people who are very ambivalent, or just like I said, not thrilled, not impressed, whatever. Or, oh gosh, I don't really look good. that's about it. And then you just kind of go on with your day. That's normal. But if it's like, you know, then it's not.
It's crazy that we're so mean to ourselves, but I think so much of it is society constantly nitpicking you. And whether it's, like you said, when you're thin.
If you have these issues, you will look for something in society, or you will keep something alive that happened 20 years ago. So it's still coming more from you. It's not really society. I always say, if you look, you will find, basically, when it comes to this stuff. Like, you could have a world where hardly anybody says anything about weight, and the person that has that problem, they will still find the one person that is talking about weight in a very toxic way. You are drawn to that type of stuff. And even if you're not talking about media or whatever, then you could have a friend that, again, you can almost pick up with the other person if you both have something going on. You can it's kind of like it takes one to know one, and you teach each other stuff. It's horrible, but I'm just being real about it. It is, if you seek, you will find, basically. So society is never going to be like, nobody has these E followed by the letter D's. That's never going to exist. So it's always up to us in recovery to not engage with that and to reject that, and to, at times, like myself, speak out against it if that's something that you're so inclined to do. But no, society is probably a lot less, critical of fatness than it's ever been. Ever. It's almost to a point where it's ridiculously going the opposite direction, where it's like celebrated, and it's still not good enough. For fat activists, it's still not enough that they literally celebrate how fat they are, and it still isn't enough. It will never be enough because it's coming from inside. It is a mental health problem.
Thinner, how dare you get so thin? But when you're bigger, they call you all these names, they shame you, and it's like, that's when you sort of just have to.
It's a lot of times that's people that have these issues. You externalize it onto people, you project it onto people, and you reinforce and all these things. So it's all across, like, I can't really say the names of all of them, but y'all know them. And it doesn't matter. If somebody's got that going on, they're going to talk weirdly about that. They're going to say that stuff, but it isn't everyone. That's not true. It's not even most people. But if you have that going on in your brain, you're going to hone in on what that one person said, and you're going to ignore the 20 people that didn't have anything to say about it. You're going to be like, so you have to try to really stay objective. Again, it's like a toxic belief system. You have to really stay objective with this stuff. And it can be tricky because, like I said, you're going to be, they said this. So then it becomes, everybody says it. No, it's you're only paying attention to people who do. Be objective. How many people are not saying things? You have to look at it that way.
It's up in the air and be like,
that's
you know
what I did. Do you feel like you owed it to people to tell them that you lost weight when you were going through that journey?
It's weird. There wasn't TikTok or anything like that. And I feel like TikTok and Twitter it was like new Twitter and newer Instagram. So people didn't have the balls that they do now, I would say. Like, now it's a different level of people feeling like they have the right to attack people. But people definitely would make their assumptions. And I mean, I would work out, but they always were like, you're not the same person anymore. You're not funny. We liked the fat Chloe. Always saying, it's like, well, that's not nice either.
Yeah.
Like, it's
That's, yeah. It's toxic ritualistic. It is. It's gone on for a long time. I'm telling you. So that's bad.
But always as if I let so many people down. And
Right.
that's why I relate to what you're saying so
Yeah.
much. But you just have to worry about not letting yourself down. And if you feel like you're doing the right thing, and I think sharing your journey at the right time is the responsible thing.
They always say you don't owe anybody your health. You don't. You don't owe them destroying your health. You don't owe anybody in the toxic ritualistic world. You can throw off the duty of that disorder at any moment. And they do get pissed. Because if you leave, it's like leaving a cult. It pisses people off. So for me, how I dealt with it, which this is not how everybody's going to deal with it, but I'm just kind of extra in some ways. I'm so aggressive against it. It's like, I'm not messing with you. Don't even try with me. Don't even play with me. I don't give a fuck what you have to say. That's my approach. It works. It's very strong boundaries. I get that it's not for everybody. There are a lot of people who are really nice, and it's very unfortunate that these disorders, they do affect a lot of super, super nice people where they can't really be that way. You know, not being a super nice person, it's a blessing and a curse. That's a blessing of it. I can be like, I don't give a fuck what you have to say. So it's like, ooh, that's kind of the energy that I put out there kind of about it. And it's like, I'm so not. It's like, I am not like that at all. You are not going to get any reinforcement from me. And so they don't really try. Sometimes there's a lot of times where I'll say things where people who are kind of struggling with it or they're trying to get out, like it can trigger people sometimes. But it's not like, I've been very supported. You guys have been great for the most part, obviously. Even if there have been some disagreements or sometimes where I've triggered you guys about certain things, for the most part, we're doing great. You know what I'm saying? And it's because you guys aren't like, in my opinion, you're not always fully in it. Sometimes you're still trying to get out of it. So it's like, you can be triggered, but it's not like, you know what I'm saying? You're not like really trying to force somebody else to still be in that logic. It's very difficult if you haven't been in it. I try to explain it to people who haven't had it, but it's really weird. It's like a cult. It really is. You have to deprogram it. It's so bizarre, especially because it is so socially enforced. Because, if we think about how crazy that is, that people are telling Chloe you're not funny anymore because you lost weight. It's just crazy. It's horrible. It's horrible. There's been times where I've had a little bit of issues sometimes where people have been like, oh my gosh, like, you're so much meaner now or whatever. And it's like, I've been the exact same at every size. Like, because I haven't really, like, there have been times where I try to be more diplomatic. Then there's times where I don't care about being diplomatic. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of go through some phases like that, but it's not that much. And everybody trusts me, especially my friends. They all make fun of me. And they're like, you're not hiding how you feel at all. Because I remember I had this one moment last year. I was like, I need to try to be more demure, And all my friends are like, you're not demure. Like, not even a little bit. Like, when are you trying? When are you starting to try? Like, I literally would get that question. Oh, you're actually trying? It's bad. So it doesn't really show. It's kind of like the glass closet I was in back in the day. But that's just me. Okay? That's just me. So I'm brat. I'm not demure. I'm brat. Brat forever. I'm just kidding. I always was a brat. I'm born the same year as Charlie. So we're brats together. Okay? Both Leos. I think she was born like 3 days apart, something like that. Brat forever. Anyways, I need to stop. Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and end it here. So we'll get back to this tomorrow. Like I said, I'm going to just do the whole thing this time. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.